No, Cole, the pie can wait till after. I already started. Just fucking get over here. Hey guys, Matt here. Me and Cole, like we said, we're going to be doing the post deadline podcast, hot takes, analyzing the deals. Generally, probably just shitting on one side of the deal. So please be ready. But Cole, you ready?
I mean, yeah, you told me no pie, so apparently no pie.
All right, I'm going to give you the option here.
Uh-huh.
Do we want to start with the Cabanas trade or end with the Cabanas trade? There's really only two ways to go about it.
I mean, I think you saved the big one for last. That was the crazy one.
All right, so I'm just going to go through. We're going to break down a couple of the trades that happened leading into today, and then we're just going to go through the trade submissions block and go from there. I honestly have no idea when the last time we did podcast is, so I'm not sure what date to be looking at for deals. I think we did talk about the Josh Johnson trade last time, right? Right?
I think so. I don't know.
All right, we'll skip over that one. That does land us with the first one that we've got to talk about is Don Lund going to Toronto. Lund's a pretty decent player. It's kind of what Mitch seems to go for in some of his middle infielders. Some versatility. He is both corners of the infield. Great contact and great avoid K. I'm going to be honest. There's half a chance that Lund is gone by the time that we post this podcast, despite the fact that there's no more trades allowed. This is probably a guy that's around for maybe the rest of this season. I don't foresee him being on the 25-man roster for the Blue Jays next year. He's nothing special, and Mitch demands one thing, and that is the biggest names in the league. In return, they gave up Brian Leach. Not sure how Toronto continues to have prospects that are good enough to get major league quality players. But Leach is a pretty solid guy. He was drafted in 2017 second round. He's bounced around a couple of times. He was another one of the pieces in the Tim Hampton deal. Cole, you got anything?
No. I mean, Leach is, he's looks like he could be a decent player. The fact that, like you said, that Toronto keeps coming up with these players to get major league pieces is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, even Kyle Rogers, the second piece in there, is not dog shit by any means. My scout sees him as a future AAA guy, probably a guy ends up going to minor league free agent, signs, maybe one of those 30-day option deals. So you're not talking about anything amazing, but you're talking about a guy who maybe gets his cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep finding these guys as, it's seemingly throw-ins in trades.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we've got the dump of Brian Matz. He's injured for the next 10 months, signed for another few years. It's whatever. In return, they gave up Dominic Pipkin, who I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of. Future relief guy, 2 pitches, low control by my scout, and still light years away. And Nick Brandon, who I'm a little bit higher on. I do love the eye on Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, he's got my scout likes his eye. He's got pretty good across the board on his offensive stats. His third base defense though is insanely high. Having that range and that arm that can really help him.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a guy who ultimately probably gets a shot at the major leagues. It might not be anything special. It might be we've got a few injuries and we'd rather go with you than they, really burn the option of one of our prospects. But this is solid enough. He's nothing crazy in return for it. Ends up being a decent haul of $16.5 million or a little bit less than that. But Chicago, I believe, has the money, so why not use it to fill up the system a little bit?
Mhm.
What do we got next?
So you have the Phillies and the Giants making a trade here. You have Philly getting Hale and Latos.
Yeah, and Hale is one of the better outfielders in the league.
Yeah.
Um, gonna be honest, the guys that Phillies have been able to acquire thus far been pretty solid. They've added Bell, they've added Hale, they've added there's someone I know I'm missing, but it's been a couple pretty decent acquisitions to an already pretty decent lineup that has Kamita in the middle. Oh, they got Juan Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their middle lineup is pretty solid. That being said, there's no chance of them making a run at it this year. And I just don't know if there is enough built around to end up making this a team that does make a run for it. So that's going to be something interesting over the next couple years. Latos is very much still a major league pitcher.
Yeah, he's 31, but he's still putting up good numbers. I mean, he's only had a 2 WAR with San Francisco before he got traded. I mean,
the one concerning thing is this is a big contract.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 3 more years in a vesting option year, and he's coming off of a flexor tendon tear in his elbow. I mean, this isn't necessarily what you want with a guy this age, but he was still throwing it pretty well before.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing saying he can't come back, but there's some question marks for sure.
Yeah.
In return, San Fran, I really like Ibarra. This is a dude, he is actually on pace, I think, to be the most valuable reliever in all of baseball, shooting for a 3.4 WAR. He has gotten 1 start with San Fran, so it'll be interesting to see if maybe that's something they're going to push him towards. He went 6 innings. His other 2 outings with San Fran, he went 3 innings. So definitely a guy that's being pushed on pace for 120 innings. You also got Fulmer.
Yeah, Fulmer he's a nice piece, being 25, but torn rotator cuff right now. That's tough.
And I'm realizing this would be so much funnier if we didn't have our injury things in, and we're like, and he's out 10 months with a bruised jaw. But yeah, I mean, Fulmer's a really nice piece. Again, the 10 months, it's really tough to have an understanding as what he's going to be when he comes back. He had a very solid year last year. I think was in contention for the Rookie of the Year, if not winning it. Let's see if we've got anything. I'm not seeing anything. So I'm honestly not sure. I know he was certainly someone I considered with my vote. It'll be interesting. If he comes back fully healthy, this is a nice little addition to San Fran's bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in my personal opinion, the rest of the deal was a couple of filler guys. Emilio Martinez is probably someone who, I mean, he had a wonderful 2018, but he just did not look the same last year. He didn't look the same he didn't look the same to start this year. I don't see this as being a game-changing piece, but I could certainly be wrong. He's going to get a shot in San Fran, and maybe it works out with the elite level defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next piece was John Hawkins, who is 19, young kid, but he's got looks solid across the board. He's got two plus pitches. I mean, my scout's not super high on him, but I mean, he looks like he could end up being a decent bullpen piece down the line.
Yeah, my scout's kind of the same way. He was drafted in 2018, 4th round. This is the 3rd time he's been traded. It's definitely interesting. Maybe a future AAA guy.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing of note for me is he was in High A, Clearwater, and is now in short season A with the Giants. Just definitely a pushback after he was doing pretty solid up a couple levels. So, something to keep an eye on. Some of these smaller deals, guys, we're just gonna skip. This 800,000 in cash is two small guys going to Cleveland. Literally nothing crazy. Chris Fletcher. Now, I'll be honest. I was in talks with the Dodgers about potentially sending George Cuco, my first baseman. This is a deal, realistically, I should have accepted if I was offered. I wouldn't have accepted if I was offered. If I was moving him, I needed to win the deal. But I really do like this deal for Tampa.
Tampa?
Yeah, I like this for Tampa. I'm sorry, Kansas City. They are the ones who had Fletcher. I'm thinking of Fletcher when he was, correct me if I'm wrong, he was back with Tampa a while ago, correct? Yeah. He was in that deal over the offseason that actually included someone we talked about earlier, Nick Brennan.
Mm-hmm.
I like this deal for Kansas City. This might be their first trade win since they lost Rhett as a GM. They've been a little bit inactive, but this is a really nice deal for them.
Yeah, to get a player like Fletcher, I mean, for the pieces like Evan Smith is a good piece. He could turn into something decent. He's been doing okay. I mean
this is
4 WAR's not fantastic.
no, but this is also a first round pick from just last year.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a small issue with a torn rotator cuff last year, which dropped his stock a little bit. But he's been pitching pretty well. He's shown that he really didn't lose much, and he's been doing pretty okay in Double A,
mm-hmm.
Which is obviously a pretty quick push for a guy drafted last year.
Yeah, and then so next you have Billy Rounds, who, looking at him, the surprising thing is he was jumped from high A ball to Triple A. Like,
yeah,
no in between there. So I mean that's going to be interesting to see how he's going to do now that he's been skipped a few levels there.
But this is a lefty outfielder with tools coming out of his asshole.
Mm-hmm.
He plays defense. He runs, hits for big power. Again, everything's a little raw. Like you said, he was in high A and he was there probably for a reason. So it's going to be interesting if he ever does fill out everything. But the dude's got some talent.
Mm-hmm.
And the last piece, seemingly a little bit of a throw-in, was Nutball Gonzalez. Great nickname. Love it. Venezuelan, finally promoted to stateside after 3 years down in the Dominican. Personally, I'm a pretty decent fan of him as a little throw-in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, with the 70 grade slider with decent control and stuff. I mean, there's some upside there. You could see him, making a jump and
this is maybe a guy, future long man. Maybe only 2-3 years in the bigs, but can be effective if used in the right role.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we got Almont, who Hines is very set on is a star and the best reliever in the league. He's certainly had a pretty good year. I believe it was him that came over last year and proceeded to go like 17 or 18 scoreless to end the season with Tampa. I think this is an amazing pickup by Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I don't necessarily love is this is a guy who's been constantly injured. It sucks if he gets injured. And knowing Cincinnati,
everyone gets injured.
Well, yeah. The nice thing is they really didn't give up anyone that's too terrific. Nick Doyle is a GCL bat. He's really nothing more. Maybe the 4-hitter on that team, but what's that say about a guy? And I actually do like Jacob Wallace, but he's meh as a reliever. And he's really been struggling this year as a 20-year-old pitching in rookie ball.
Yeah.
Um, couple of minor trades. Not gonna mention anything. And then we got the one that incited a message to me saying, "Fuck, goddamn, they're stealing him." At which point I was quite confused. The trade had not been posted yet. I was not privy to any additional information. But slowly but surely, I started to realize it was Miguel Pineda going from the nation's capital to potentially the home of the 2019 MLB Pro World Series champions. Possible?
Could be.
I check. Miguel Pineda's been having a terrific year. He's been having a terrific career.
Mm-hmm.
This is a dude, he's got everything that you could possibly ask for. 99-mile-an-hour sinker, 65 grade curveball, great movement, great control. He even fields his position well. I mean, this is your bona fide ace among aces. Like, this is already a great staff in Colorado. And they upgrade.
Yeah, that's a very good move for Colorado. And like when you look at some of the pieces they gave up for this, yes, they gave up Cartwright, who was their best.
Well, I think the big thing was they did give up one of their aces in Judd Graham.
Mm-hmm.
Judd Graham does have a little bit more time of team control, which is maybe a big thing for Washington as they're likely out of contention the next couple of years, although they are just 3.5 back this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them making a run, but they needed to get some pieces and maybe get ready for the rebuild a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Judd Graham, very nice addition. And like you said, Cartwright,
who is out right now.
Yeah.
So that hurts his stock in this deal.
It looks, he was injured on the 22nd and was diagnosed with the injury on the 23rd, the day that he was traded.
Oof.
Matt, if you're listening to this, I would like to ask for a full investigation into this. I don't know if all teams and all parties were privy to all information regarding the recent injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly think that this maybe needs to be a trade that needs to be looked at and potentially voided. It would be heartbreaking for Colorado, but
yeah, to have an injury, affect someone like that, there's, you always wonder if all the information was given.
Yeah, I mean, the one nice thing is this is just a ruptured tendon, which sounds awful, but it's just in his finger. He just can't grip the baseball. It's apparently a small thing you got to be able to do. But this probably needs to get looked into.
Mm-hmm.
The next two pieces, nothing special. Michael Johnson is a AAA guy through and through. Probably never gets above there. Really, realistically, never gets above there. But I actually really do like Lauren Rogers.
Yeah, Lauren Rogers. I mean,
who, might I add, has 2 home runs in 5 ABs for Washington's AAA team.
Mm-hmm. Which are his only 2 hits.
Is that good?
Yeah, I mean, but this is a guy, he came up, he didn't do great in 30 days of service time, but he only played in 17 games, started 3, there's not...
Yeah, I mean, that's 19 at-bats. You put Hines out there for 19 at-bats. He's not going to look too hot, but he might be able to hit 200 as well.
Yeah.
This is a guy I think has a potential chance. Has a nice spring training. He might break an opening day roster with someone.
Yeah.
And if not, he's a really nice guy as a throw-in a deal, especially for a team that maybe has a weak first baseman. You throw him in and hey, if you got an injury, here's a guy who maybe can fill in and not completely shit the bed. Then we got David Price going to Cleveland. I think this is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Price has not been himself this year. But I'm sorry, Price going to the Yankees. Price has not been himself this year with Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a Yankees team that's apparently buying at the deadline. This is a shit ton of money for the next 5 years.
Yeah. And David Price is 33.
Yeah, David Price is 33 on the decline. Yes, there's some money sent back. D. Gordon's owed 7.5 for the next 3 years. So you're looking at, it's not as bad as David Price for $15 million, but it's a really interesting buy from the Yankees.
Yeah.
The one nice takeaway for them is they walk away with Derek Fletcher, who's a pretty decent player.
Mm-hmm.
Is he worth $15 million?
I don't think so, but I mean, it's definitely
the hope is basically that David Price is going to become David Price of old.
Uh-huh.
And personally, I just don't see it happening. The last time he was that good was 2017.
Yeah.
So maybe not the greatest buy on the Yankees, but if they've got the money, they've got the money. We've got the Peacock for the Musgrove switch. I do like this for San Diego. I actually think Musgrove is a pretty damn solid pitcher who just maybe needs to find the right ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, Peacock, I really don't think is anything special. I do believe he signed an extension, 4 years, $15 million per with a player opt-out. This is interesting for a guy who's 31, and he had a great year last year, great year the year before that, but been down this year.
Yeah, and this year with his third different team.
Yeah.
So that's
just so you realize, most guys who are on 3 teams in a single season aren't necessarily the best players in the league. Not necessarily the guys that are getting $60 million. Aren't necessarily the pieces that are winning you the World Series.
Yeah. It's an interesting move. Since Cincinnati being the team that's in, they keep saying they're in contention and they want to go for the playoffs.
The most interesting thing is Musgrove has actually been better than Peacock this year.
Yeah.
So it'll certainly be interesting. This is they got Peacock before anyone else could. They were able to get him on an extension. I just don't know if that was necessarily the best move.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got a small trade, Jacob Julius to Seattle. Of note because he is a major league player, but another guy on his third team of the season. He's okay. That's kind of where I'll leave it. He's a little bit better against righties than lefties. He's a platoon guy. Okay. Now, the Walker Buehler trade.
Mm-hmm.
I'd first like to start by pointing out that Walker Buehler was with the Atlanta Braves, I believe, just a year and a half ago. He was traded, 7/31, so deadline day, 2017.
Okay, so it's been 2 years.
2 years ago. He is now in Oakland. Ronald Acuna is traded again. That is 1, 2, 3, 4 trades for Ronald Acuna. But this, I don't, there's some teams here, I don't understand how they didn't pay out the asshole for Walker Buehler.
Yeah, I don't. I'm like, you're right. I don't understand.
Where is the knock on him?
He doesn't field his position well?
He is 25. He is making league minimum.
Mm-hmm.
He is under control for, I believe, the next 5 years. Maybe 4. I'll check this just so I can be right when I tell all of you that you're idiots. Walker Buehler is under control for 4 more years after this. Expected to top out at $11.5 million. He has been in the major leagues for a total of 53 starts. He's done very well.
Is that what you call that?
2018, 30 starts, 3.35 ERA as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're 20 starts this year. Oh, he's up to 4.05. I really don't care. Like this is a dude who has everything you could possibly ask for and somehow didn't get 6 prospects. When everyone's complaining about people asking for unreasonable amounts, this was a pretty fair deal that realistically could have asked for an unreasonable amount.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like Acuna.
Mm-hmm.
I traded Acuna. I got my starting catcher for it, so I'm never going to complain about that. This is a guy who's been a little bit rushed. I don't think he is ready for AAA, which is where he is right now. But he's a future Major League outfielder and maybe a guy who pushes for an All-Star game.
Yeah.
One. Just one. He is not a bona fide superstar. He's a nice player. Pavin Smith. Again, a pretty nice player. He is probably a pretty solid outfielder. I'm sorry, first baseman. But he is a first baseman.
Not a premium position.
Without power. And to add to it, he's a first baseman. This guy's, his ratings are pretty similar to that of Keon Barnum, who we'll get to later in the segment. And then you got Luis Seda, who actually I was a big fan of. I think he could be one of the better second basemen in the league. The only thing is he played 24 games last year and did meh. He played 50 games in the major leagues this year and he did all right. But he's now coming to Miami and he is not your starter. He is a major league player who could not beat out Xander Bogaerts as far as Miami's roster is going. Now, whatever, you got Bogaerts already, et cetera, et cetera. But if this is one of the guys in this trade where you're sending your ace, I mean, don't you at least want a starting second baseman?
Yeah.
Because he's not a prospect despite his age.
No, I mean, 21, who has less than a year of, service time. Like, he still has lots of control in him, but you're absolutely right. You're not going to...
But that's the thing is, if he does get called up to the majors this year, he is going to break, more than likely, he'll get close to or break the 1 year of service time mark.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's the reasoning is let's keep him down and then get 6 years. But Miami, you're pushing for the playoffs. Yes, you're 5 games out. You're actually behind the Nationals, which I was quite surprised to see. But you're above 500. You've got the Braves, who just had an injury to their ace and sold the best player in the entire league. You're behind the Mets, who made no buys at the deadline. And you're behind Washington, who made no buys at the deadline. You had a chance. If you're gonna move your ace, you gotta go for it. I'm more appalled at, because I actually think their return pretty reasonable. Mm-hmm. They got a pretty solid return. I can't complain as far as Miami goes. But the Angels, the Mariners, hell, even the Astros, how are you not offering more for this? I'll be honest, I was in on it. I was told that my offer couldn't beat it, and rather than try and one-up it, I sat back and looking back on it, probably the wrong move. This is a bona fide ace that any team could have gone out and gotten, and a lot of teams sat on their heels. The one that surprises me the most, though, is the Angels. They had the prospect depth.
Mm-hmm.
They had the need for pitching.
Mm-hmm.
They were in discussions, and they backed away.
Yeah, I'm like, we'll get to the. I want to talk about the Angels later. I mean, because
We definitely need to talk about the Angels because Matt keeps winning.
Yeah,
He has won. He has proven that he knows, to some extent, how to win. Whether it's just his roster is that good or he's making the right moves, that's yet to be determined. But I think this time is the one time we've seen a slip up from Matt.
the end of an era.
Possibly. Moving on, small trade Gio Gonzalez to Miami. A little bit of a replacement on the roster. They send back Bill Pike, who pretty decent, okay. Looks like a guy who, if he could play second base, would be on Mitch's roster. But yeah, I mean he's been a AAA, a little bit of major league time, back and forth. I don't absolutely love him, but he's a pretty decent first baseman, nothing crazy. I actually do want to comment on this one. Javi Guerra is traded to the Braves. He's a nice relief piece. And the Braves get $3 million in cash for him. Yeah, they've got to hold on to him for the 2020 and 2021 season, but they basically have him for free this season. And this is a guy who, in the past, has been a good reliever. This year, dog shit for Chicago. The Braves are buying? ? Now, the next trade on the list is the trade. We're skipping it. I'll let you walk through the next one.
So this is.
I'd like to start out by saying this is the Ben Richardson trade.
Okay.
This is not the Jorge Alvarado trade. This is not the Will Ward trade. This is the Ben Richardson trade. Mark my words.
Ooh. Out with forearm cramps right now. That's not good.
I've got bone chips.
Bone chips? Oh, yeah. Also bone chips. Yeah, no, Ben Richardson is...
He's a 3-letter word. A-C-E, ace.
Yeah. I mean, not the word I was going to use. I was going to say dude, but I mean...
That's 4 letters there, bud.
I realized that.
Kansas education, guys.
Yeah, Ben, I mean, he's I don't even know how to describe
He's a dude.
him.
He is a dude.
Yeah. I mean, Jorge Alvarado, I mean, fantastic contact. I mean, this guy, he's not terrible. I mean, 2018, he had a 2.6. I mean, this year he was, negative WAR. So, I mean, maybe having, a decline in his kind of coming back to earth after that first year in the majors. Good player. Doesn't really have a position at first base, but 45 at first base is that really a position?
He's the clunker that's playing first, despite the fact that he's not that big to be a clunker.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's a lot there. Tampa's always had some pretty solid first basemen. This might actually be one of the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
But he was pretty solid last year. He's been, below league average in all regards this year. I don't necessarily see there being a big turnaround. I think they did give up a lot in the end
Mm-hmm.
for a first baseman who is struggling. Because it's not like you just gave up Richardson. Um, Will Ward is another guy. The one good thing is this is very similar to the Sonny Gray trade in real life a couple years ago. They're giving up some banged up prospects.
Yeah. Fractured shoulder blade, 5 to 6 weeks. I'm like,
But you'll agree with me. Will Ward is a future major league player.
yes, yeah. I mean, like he's already reached the majors, and he will get back. I believe he'll get back there.
Yeah, I mean, he was in AAA. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't go back there once he's back healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not wonderful on defense, but he's not a complete and total liability. He just needs a little bit more time there. Show him some love. And actually, Preston Carver, who I think is a very solid second baseman, he was struggling a lot to start this year, which is why he's been spending time down in AAA. Maybe a change of scenery is what's going to work for him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a guy I think can be a pretty solid second baseman in this league.
Yeah. Jacob Wallace, young guy, looks like he could end up being a decent reliever.
He was in the other trade, correct? Yeah, he was traded a few days ago in the Philippe Almont deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is you got him and you ship him right out. And then the last one is Jordan Groshans, who I actually think is pretty solid.
Yeah.
In a league that's lacking third base prospects, this is a okay third baseman.
Yeah. No, he's a nice.
My scout personally says AAA guy, maybe a little bit better. I know other scouts around the league are maybe a little bit higher of fifth infield type guy, but we'll see. I mean, he's still relatively young. He's 19 and in rookie ball.
Yeah.
He'll have his chance to prove himself somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna skip over the next couple trades. There's nothing too crazy there. You got a shit ton of money eaten again by Chicago. They took on Jesus Montero. They got back Oscar Lester, who I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of, and Bill Hodges, who again I'm not the biggest fan of. I believe that Montero's on a player option for next year. Yeah, he's on a player option. If he does opt out, well, you spent like $6 or so million, and you didn't really lose anything, and you got a few okay guys.
Yeah.
And then the last trade before today's chaos.
Yeah, Brandon Gill. I mean, this is one. You had been talking to me about behind the scenes. This is he's a really good third baseman.
This is a guy I've had several teams tell me that they had Gill in other offers for some pretty sizable pieces. I've heard all over from Sixto Sanchez to Walker Buehler to believe Shelby Miller, going way back Esteban Hernandez. Like, this is a guy who's been the headlining prospect in several discussions. Personally, I was thrilled to get him. I do love myself some Cody Chapman, but I didn't necessarily see him as breaking into the rotation that I've got now, especially with Ramos and Davila coming up. If I could get myself a hitting prospect where I've always been a little bit light, this is a deal that I'm going to make. And in return, I ended up giving up Buckle and Faria, who are two guys that I got on minor league contract with major league option deals this offseason. And actually, Faria did pitch pretty decently with me to start the year. Nothing crazy, but he served his role.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love Gill. Personally, we're going to be exploring him a little bit in the outfield and maybe try and make him a full-time, util guy who's not necessarily going to start anywhere but starts every game. who knows if this is going to work, but he's still got a few years until he's in the majors, so let's try it. Gonna look real quick. I doubt Matt has all of the trades in. No, he does not. So we're gonna hop over to the trade submissions page. There's like 58 of them.
Today? Probably. That sounds right.
All right. Wherever my trade is the last one before. Let's see. Okay, we're starting here. Rays White Sox, the Rock Shoulders trade.
Mm-hmm.
Shoulders is on the DL. Let's go over to the game. Hold this up. This is so much more difficult. I gotta type. I gotta switch screens. I do like Rock Shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Rock Shoulders has a great name.
And he's out.
He is out, yes. So he's out for 3 weeks, sprained ankle, nothing crazy. But he's been a pretty solid first baseman, albeit nothing amazing for a couple years. And they get back Ronenberg and Goodwin.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ronenberg the guy from Rookie of the Year?
Oof. It's been a while since I've seen that. That's it could be.
But Ronenberg, pretty solid lefty reliever. About the same amount of control left as what Shoulders had for him. So a little bit of a fill our needs type thing. And then Goodwin. Gerald. First off, no professional athlete should be named Gerald. But big fastball, 22 years old, throwing cheddar with what he calls a slider and what he calls a splitter. Some scouts are like, that's just a slower fastball and a fastball you tried to move. But he's trying his best. There's very limited control so far. There's not a ton of movement. It's a straight 98-mile-an-hour fastball. It does really well, surprisingly, against a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Guys who haven't seen 98 before?
Yeah, and then when he does throw something else, they're not smart enough to pick up on the change in arm speed, and they just swing and miss.
Yeah.
Hence the 11.5 K per 9.
Yeah.
Again, nothing crazy. I think this is a little bit of a sell low on Shoulders, but I don't hate it for anyone. It's Tampa got other first basemen. They got Alvarado.
Mm-hmm.
It's Shoulders is out. Shoulders is out of a job. Might as well get something in return. Where are we? Rockies White Sox trade. I don't give a shit. Sorry, not a big deal. Another not a big deal. Clicked on the same deal. Okay, this is a major leaguer. Egan Smith. Goes to the White Sox. Do you care to comment?
I mean, there's not a lot there.
Egan Smith pitches. Summarize the deal.
Yeah.
Hold on. It seems we got a file is up. Give us 1 second. This is going to make our life easier, therefore your life easier. Downloading a new file. We have 0%. Let me finish this beer real quick. 25, 30, 36, 40. Guys, I gotta say, turned out to be a pretty exciting deadline day, despite realistically not a ton of big deals being made.
No, there wasn't a ton of big deals, but there was a lot of those medium deals, that required some prospects, but not like the entire haul. I mean, but nothing was going to live up to the deal.
And updated. And we go in transactions, player trade, trade log. Yes. Would you like to talk about the Shelby Miller deal now?
Sure, we can talk about it now.
Is it true that at one point you had an offer from all 5 AL West teams?
No, that's not true.
Okay, go ahead and explain.
So, the front runners for this, the Rangers and the Angels were the two that were the most aggressive for it and throughout the process.
I believe the Rangers were in on it for a while.
Yeah, the Rangers
since the Braun deal.
Yeah, we've had contact. It was one of those things where I was waiting it out. I was hoping that the deadline would get me, the best deal possible, and I believe I was right.
Going into this morning, what was the trade offer you had?
Going into this morning, I had deal from the Angels and deal from the Rangers.
Go ahead and give me the Rangers deal.
The Rangers deal, let me look it up. It's been a long time since this morning.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It was Dave Riley.
Yes, Dave Riley was in it.
Durbin Feltman.
Yes.
Zach Birdie.
Yes.
And Dan Hughes.
Yes.
So you were getting 4 guys.
Yeah. It was, Dave Riley, my scouts were really high on him as a hitter. Hughes was a young pitcher who
second rounder this year, I believe.
Second rounder. We saw a lot of promise in him, a lot of talent there, and then 2 young elite closers.
Yeah. So I don't think that I'd say a blow away offer necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
There are question marks about Riley around the league, especially around his defense and his contact rate. There's no questions about his power. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
So you had 4 players in that offer.
Mm-hmm.
The deal you walked away with was Avery Barnes, who is a little bit of a salary dump, but it's not like he's a below league average player this year.
Mm-hmm.
He is playing to the tune of expected 1 WAR, and he was a 2.4 WAR guy last year. Certainly nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
You then got 3 top 100 prospects